Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome back to another episode of Naked Sunday. I am your host, Caleb Nelson, and I have the lovely, the fantabulous, the exuberant, I think I can't think of any more really clever, awesome, and heart. Oh, we've got heart emojis. Anybody who is not watching, we had the Apple update heart emoji blast off situation from Sue Ryan here with me on the podcast today. Sue, thank you for joining me on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I am so excited to share time together.
We were just doling over that all beforehand, how excited we were to hang out with each other. I don't understand why people go out of their way to hang out with people they don't want to, like, that don't bring them joy, especially when this is like, sure, there's kind of like a businessy thing around this, but like there's a brand and some, but like, because people should build a life around, especially if they're doing their own business and it's a fun thing, like make it fun, like hang out with the people that you like to have a conversation with, because it, no matter what, I think that always shines through. The best stuff is when people like enjoy being around each other and just having a good conversation.
Don't you work better when you're filled with joy and when you're connected with your purpose? So why not start from that and let the work evolve from that? Because then it's something that you realize you were meant to do in the world. I mean, you were brought here to do this. It's not like you're trying to figure something out, like, what am I supposed to do? You're like, oh, let me get everything out of the way so I've got more capacity to be doing the things that I love to do, that I'm meant to do, that I'm here for. And so that's so cool.
Well, it kind of ties to what you're saying. We were talking about before. We were talking about for so everybody's kind of clued in. We were talking about like studying for tests or things like that before. But if you're not dialed in after the test, like blackout, can't think of it anymore. It's not fun anymore. I don't care about it. It's gone from the memory back into the ether. If you care about it, it just keeps going and you retain
Yeah.
the information. They've shown that educational models like that follow more of this type of, we'll call it context-based learning, like that kind of thing, it sticks as opposed to just straight memorization, because you actually can tie it to things that are meaningful and substantive. So, anywho, yeah, hyped to be hanging out with you. I don't know if you've listened to any of these episodes. Have you listened to the podcasts? No?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have. How about that?
You blush while you're at
Go
it.
on now. How
Not
cool.
just my fake and bake today. That there's some
No,
blushing.
it's not.
Let's
It's
go. What
but it is a good fake and bake. You got some going on.
a little bit of that extra glow, because sometimes I got to manufacture that extra vitamin D in my body, so that I'm trying to keep up with my wife, who has very like dark olive tones kind of thing going on with her. For me to capture the remotest of tans compared to her is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Sure, let's go sit in the sun for like an hour and just like bronze and beautiful, and it's incredible. But
You just want your teeth to look whiter.
that doesn't hurt either. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not gonna not say that the vanity play is not part of this whole thing. So you know what I'm saying?
It's working. There you go.
Uh, with that in mind, though, then I like to start off my episodes with why I appreciate my guest, and I think it's pretty obvious at this point. But I love your energy from like how positive and exciting and entertaining and engaging you are, but also from our first conversation, the depths of what you focus on in your life and the spaces you've been. I really value the resiliency and your strength and just your overall optimistic outlook on life, because speaking about people that I don't know typically get along with, I don't get really along well with like pessimists, because what's the point? What are we showing up for if we don't think there's a chance at working things out? People that look for the brighter side of things, for the opportunity in the darkness, those are the people who make the change. And that's the things that I'm attracted to people who are looking to build like great lessons and to get through the challenging times, because well, they're just way better to be around, because you actually get to do better things and you grow as a human being. So go figure. So
I
anyway.
live my life through massive acceptance, radical presence, and unquenchable curiosity.
Ooh, okay.
Three great things to live my life through, and it works.
Well, let's lean into that. So if you, because you know yourself better than I, share with the audience then, who are you?
I really am a person who has recognized that I have been brought here to touch other people's lives through the lessons that come through me. And that each of us is that way, but I've learned that for myself. So I won't tell everybody else they need to do it. But through the experiences of my life, which have been including my professional life, which for nearly 40 years was in enterprise application software, the software that's the back office operations, general ledger, payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, that supports very large organizations. And then in parallel with that, being in roles of family caregiving support. And so I learned a lot about myself, of who I am meant to be in different roles of my life. And then I started studying different modalities of how I can learn more about myself. And I recognized that everything happens through me. That I used to think when I was younger, things happened to me. And then I thought, well, I got a little wiser and things happened for me. And now I've recognized is that every single experience in my life is has a lesson in it for me. It's something for me to learn. And it teaches me about all the different aspects of my life and all the emotions of my life and all the things. And it allows me to be in a better place with this unquenchable curiosity, which I've had since I was a child and used to annoy everybody and probably still does, about what is there here for me to learn? What is there here for me to know? And then when people have questions, things just come through me as a conduit. And it's a great space to be in.
Mm. I like that evolution. I've never heard somebody describe it that way. Like, I think things happen to me, then they happen for me, then they happen through me. I really enjoyed that evolution of the perspectives there because I only thought of it really as the two. I never thought it as the third. And I think that's a more evolved way of looking at, because I think that also in that lens, now I see it as more like you're part of that experience. It's not happening. The other one says the other two, the way you said it there, and at least in this contrast, feels more like you're an observer of the things as opposed to being a part of it. And you can observe and you can have experiences and you can learn from it and it's happening for you, but you're engaged in it and it passes through you and can be shared with others. I really like that. It's a far more engaged perspective than I think, as a lot of people like they feel like they're a passive bystander in their life. Um,
Yeah.
so
Well, or that things just happen. And I'll tell you how I came with the part about the things that happened through this. But I was very happy in the space of everything happens for me because I looked at every single experience as what is there here for me to know and what is there here for me to learn. That everything is a mirror either into something that I see or don't see in myself, or could see in myself, or don't want to see in myself. So I looked at all of that, and then based on all of the different experiences in my life, which we all have different paths in our lives. So I was meant to have the experiences that I have. And then it's what do you do with them? And because so much of my career was in technology, where I came up with the analogy was our world is full of basically an infinite amount of data, just stuff out there. Most of it we don't care about. Somebody does, but we don't care about it. So there's all this data, and then there's an area we're interested in. So we, through curiosity, start asking questions and we start gathering information. So there's data and then there's information. But we're like puppy dogs with long legs and big paws. We don't really know what to do with it. So we start practicing with it and observing other people and learning and using it and get better and better and better. We develop knowledge. We're knowledgeable about it. So we've learned how to take that data, ask questions, and we continue to do that, and we've got knowledge. Well, it's ours, but until we share it with the world, it's not wisdom. So it's when we share it through the world. So this is the part where it's coming through me. When it's wisdom for the world to share, that my unique perspective, nobody in the world could have my perspective because they haven't had the experiences, they haven't had all of those things. So there's a really important purpose for me in this world to be able to share all the things that have happened in the world through wisdom to touch other people's lives, like the pebble in the pond, and it keeps going. So that's the way I live my life.
the wisdom, that final element of sharing it with the world, that resonates with kind of that conversation I was telling you. I was had that session beforehand. That's powerful.
Well, and
Mm.
think about it, if you touch one other life, something that you say or do somewhere in your life, and I've literally had this thought, what if my whole entire life was so that there's somebody I have a conversation. I might be sitting next to them on a bus and I have a conversation and it touches their life. And then their life will go on and they'll touch other people. If that was the whole purpose of my life, I don't want to miss that. Now we don't know all those things yet. But it was one of my what ifs. So I live my life as though there's purpose to it. And like you were saying, getting rid of the things where the people are draining you or they're not helping you live your purpose. The things that I don't have pride of ownership of them. I don't have the ego that says I'm the best and this is really great and you need to learn from me. It's no, I'm just a vessel for things coming out that may or may not touch your life. And if they don't touch your life, they weren't meant to, but they may touch somebody else's life. So I feel like if I touch one other person's life, my life has value. Well, actually, I felt it had value before that, but how wonderful of passing it on, in the future. So it takes a lot of pressure off for trying to be perfect or, like, what is that? Or trying to aspire to something somebody else has set as a goal that this is what you should achieve. Nah, just wake up, be curious, see how you can touch the world.
It's a lot more playful that way. And you can experiment. I like you said that like, there's a lot less perfectionism in that perspective. Were you always this way? Did like you've gone through clearly you've gone through some evolutions. Like I kind of want to hear the story. Like how did we really get here? Like you talked about like I was in this I hear all I hear is like technical stuff and usually
Eh,
but not enough everybody eventually knows this about me. You start showing me technical stuff, my eyes glaze over and my brain just explodes. I have a deep appreciation for all the tech people out there, the people who can understand all those things. My buddy will show me a spreadsheet and we just both smile because we know what's happening. And he's like, I'm gonna give you the bullet points of what you really should know from this, and we'll be all right. But
well, and to your point, like when we were talking a little bit about education and things beforehand, we're all wired differently. We're not all wired to love it. I mean, like, who's going to let me into an operating room to do brain surgery? That's not going to happen. And nobody is going to have me. The only way people would pay me money for singing is paying me not to sing. So I love to sing, but you're not going to hear me on the voice and you're not going to see me on the stage. However, there are people who have absolutely incredible voices. Some of them don't care about technology. So we each have different gifts. What I have learned is to step into what my gifts are and to be open to exploring what my gifts are as opposed to trying to be like somebody else or what I should do. And part of this comes, one of the things that I did that some other people I'm sure have done in the world is that early in my career, people would say, well, you're really good at that. We're going to have you do this. Oh, okay. Okay. And if nobody's watching this and they're hearing it, it's like me bobbing my head back and forth going, oh, okay. So I didn't know any better. And so then they're like, oh, you're really good at this. Oh, okay. So I'm going up this corporate ladder and, like I was raised, do your very best. So I'm looking at other people and I'm like, okay, doing my very best. It never occurred to me to say, Sue, are you enjoying what you're doing? Or are you just trying to do your best? So I was doing my best. And I had this really huge epiphany one day. I was literally backstage about to get recognition for having set like all kinds of records in the company and sales that had never been made and blah, 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 blah. And they were going to, announce all this. I'm standing in the dark on the back of the stage, looking out at all these people going, I actually said something that I won't say on the podcast, but basically, why am I here? Why am I here? I mean, it's not the absence. I mean, it was great, but it wasn't who I was. And I realized I had climbed this ladder because other people had said, go to the next round, do this, do this, do this, do this. And I hadn't ever asked in myself. And I said, okay, it's time for me to become me. And I applied my unquenchable curiosity, which I had applied to outward facing things of how to become the best and all those things, to inward facing things. Who am I meant to be? What am I meant to do? How am I meant to touch the world? What lights me up? Who am I? How am I naturally wired to view the world? I had never considered that before. I had considered that I was not as good as other people because I didn't do the things the way that they did. And I would try to do it the way somebody else did. And it's like, well, that's not working for me. And then I realized by trying to be who I wasn't, I couldn't be who I was. And so I just started this exploration of, and it was an allowing, it was permission to be who am I meant to be? And it's an amazing journey. Now, it's not without the absence of tremendously challenging opportunities, except each one of those has a lesson in there for us so that we continue to evolve to who we're meant to be. So I'm still evolving.
Hmm.
And I'm so excited every morning when I wake up. I can't wait to face the day and see what it has for me.
That it's I think it's so strange how that kind of quintessential story of I've reached the pinnacle of this thing is, and ironically at that mountaintop is where you feel, I'm going to use the word hollow, but like it's not at all as cracked up to be, and it's not until you've achieved whatever that did my, you know, you're talking about, I did my best, just do your best. And in many ways it's like I'm doing the best of what everybody else thought I should be doing because I was.
Exactly. I don't even know what my best was. My thing was what other people had set was the bar of being the best. It's like, okay, 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 okay. It didn't occur to me that, well, is this your best? Is this what you really want? It wasn't part of my filter. No, I'm not, this is nothing, nobody made me do anything. So I mean, I was meant to have this experience or I couldn't be who I am today. And it was not without the lack of a tremendous number of rewards that I'm able to graciously appreciate. So there were a lot of good things in it, but it was in that moment. And so one of the things I talk about in my TED Talk is in the moment of an experience, we can't possibly know if it's ultimately good or ultimately bad. And that's where I come up with massive acceptance and radical presence. So we're aware.
I think that acceptance is the hard piece though. I mean, I don't think say both parts are it's all hard, but the acceptance of, but I feel like acceptance is like, okay, I'm moving on. Like I'm almost like I'm letting go of that that past me, that old thing. Like I'm ready to start anew. But obviously they talk about creativity. Like if
Yeah.
you're willing to just stay creative and stay curious, it's much easier to do that. Um,
What I talk about with massive acceptance, and this came to me during an experience. My dad and my husband both had different diagnoses of dementia, and as navigating those, I learned a lot of lessons. And I came up with massive acceptance and radical presence while caring for my dad in an experience where I had really let him down because I was trying to get him to do things that he'd been teaching me all my life. And he didn't have access to that anymore, but I wasn't seeing that part of it. I was just like remembering who he had been. So in reflecting on how had I failed my dad so poorly, I really was like, my dad, my rock. And I recognized that I had accepted, but not completely accepted. So massive acceptance is you accept exactly what is in the moment. We don't have to like it. We don't have to agree with it. We don't have to understand it. We just have to accept in this moment, this is exactly what is, and accept it without judgment. And when we can accept it like that, exactly the way it is, then we can stay radically present in this moment, which is all we really have, so that we can make the wisest choices in challenging moments, but then celebrate just the beauty of even the tiniest moment. And I hadn't been living my life through that before then.
so you weren't even able to appreciate like the simple things because it was.
Not in the same way. There would be judgment. Like I would talk about, like you fortune tell a future. Like you see something, you're like, oh, I'm so worried this is going to happen, or you want it to be the way it used to be. Like, gee, I just want it to go back. I wanted it to be like in the moment with my dad. I wanted it to be like when I was growing up, and he was teaching me how to be safe and teaching me how to be happy. I wanted it to be the way that it had been. Well, in that moment, it's not going to be that. And so when you let go of that and you open your mind to what is here in this moment, because I accept this is what the moment is, there are lessons for us. There are things that are here for us that are happening in our lives so that we can then in that moment do what we're meant to do in that moment, which you can't when you're clouded by, I wish it was this way or I want it to be that way,
Yeah,
because you're not seeing it clearly. Have you ever
You
felt that way? You're not looking at it clearly. You're looking at it through the way it was or the way you want it to be.
well, you just don't feel present. So of course you can't even. I feel like you're like there's something beautiful, obviously, in like athletics. We talk about like the flow state
Mm-hmm.
when I feel like I'm just here, and it's almost like everything is effortless, but there is effort, but you're just so connected to it. If you're thinking about the past or the future, you can't be there and simply be, which,
That's a perfect analogy.
yeah, it's so strange that as simple as it says, like just be present is way harder than what it sounds like. Just be here, be in the moment, just do the thing. Like it's just be here.
But we're not necessarily, I mean, we are more today. What I've noticed is there is more education about that. There's more awareness of it. There are more modalities of opportunities for us to learn in our lives that talk about being present and being in the moment. And yet often people don't have the context for it. And when we have a context for it, like you applied it to the context of you're, in the flow state, you're doing an exercise, you're doing something, and yet you're fully present in it, and you feel that you're in a flow state. You're being intentional about it. And when you're intentional about it, and part of that is that by the time we're, like about the age of 30, about 90% of our thoughts and our feelings and our actions are highly unconscious. They're things we've programmed ourselves for. So when you're talking about being in the flow state, as you mentioned, you're fully present.
It's crazy to think how much like all these programmed things and all these things that just becomes just part of what we do. And I don't even think sometimes we're realizing we're just unconsciously practicing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. That's what you're saying though, like you were also probably also practicing thinking too much about the past or the future of the thing before, like go figure, like some people never feel like they can just be in the moment. Do
Well,
you
and
have,
when you, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, like, do you have practices or rituals you do for yourself to kind of clear those things? Obviously, you talked about your TED talk, but like from a practical sense, the amount of people now with all the distractions and all the things and all the constant fears and the bombarding of different
Sure.
like there's something to be terrified about all the time, and there's something I'm regretting from my past and my trauma and my this and like shit.
Yeah.
Like how often are people just like I'm here right now and I'm just doing the thing in front of me? I am not immune to this either, so I'm saying that from a
Well, we all are. And it's not the absence of that. So Caleb, there's a lot of it that's important. Like if we didn't have automatic patterns running us in the background, we would never get out of the house in the morning. There are some of those that are really, really valuable for us. However, there are many things that when we were very, very young, before our little personalities had formed, before just the discernment had come in, that we were taught certain things and they became patterns because we were taught over and over and over again. For example, one of them is people who love you very much said, look both ways before you cross the street in order to keep you safe. And they told you not one time, but they told you over and over and over again. Did that happen to you in your life where you were told over and over and over again, look both ways before you cross the street? So
well,
you don't consciously think about that, do you? You just look most of
well, my situation was don't go into the street at all. That was like don't leave the driveway. There was a little more control to that one. So don't get me wrong. There's always that piece too. There's like the all or nothing. Like we're
but it
going.
worked. But
Yeah.
it was there for you. And it was done out of a place of love. And now today, with as many things going on, you just automatically like look both ways before you cross the street or before you leave the driveway. So there were some things like that. There were also things that we were programmed to think and feel and act that, and one of the ones I use the example of is apologize. When you're a little kid and like, you and your brother are fighting and your brother hits you and mom comes in and says, apologize. Well, I didn't do anything wrong. Apologize. But he hit me. Apologize. So you get taught because you don't really know how to discern yet. When something goes wrong, you apologize. So then later in life, and this happened, my husband passed away a few months ago, and like more than 90% of the people said, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, or I'm so sorry. So they were apologizing, but they did nothing wrong. And so we don't have, it prevents us, if we're not being intentional, it prevents us often from having the correct emotion and the correct experience for what we're going through, both for ourselves as well as for whoever else the other person is, but we're not aware of it. So my practice that I have is focusing on being intentional in my life. And I have, some people say they meditate. I do something called centering prayer, but a lot of it is just getting quiet and just getting with myself and becoming aware and just saying, what is there here for me to know? And what is there here for me to learn? And just being present in the moment and just being quiet. And then throughout the day, I'll just have a little touch point of that and I'll observe and I'll go, oh, you want to come back to this moment instead of that one? I observe myself more and no judgment. And this is the great part, no judgment. It's reasonable. So no judgment. And what would you choose? Now that you're aware of it, what do you choose to say, feel, or act? And then if it's something that you want to continue doing, for example, when we have a belief that doesn't serve us anymore, some that we may not even be aware of, and we raise that to our level of awareness, then you practice the way you want it to be until it becomes an automatic pattern for you. So it's not the absence of them, it's updating them to make sure they still serve and support you. Out with the old, in with the new.
I find so many people have a huge resistance to simply sitting still, right? You said you have a prayer or meditating for other people, like the concept, people, you say like sit still for a minute and just do nothing, quote unquote, is like nails on a chalkboard. And most people would be like, I can't do that. What's like the underlying resistance to just being still and becoming aware?
I'm not a scientist or a psychologist, so I can't tell you scientifically. And this is actually somewhat counterintuitive. People, when they're sitting still, feel like they still need to be doing something. I need to be doing nothing. So they're trying to figure out, how do I do nothing? So in the concept of being, you can't teach being. You have to let go of feeling like you need to be doing. And so that's why I say, you don't have to meditate. You don't have to do a prayer. You don't have to do, it's whatever comes to you, for you allow to be just quiet with yourself. And it's not like you're trying to achieve anything. It's not like you're trying to have, some people say, well, I'm going to meditate now until I have this feeling. There's nothing wrong with that. But to become quiet, sometimes when you're quiet and you're just with yourself, it'll show up in some other way. Just something will happen later. It's not like you're trying to achieve anything. What it is that you're when you're quiet, your inner voice that's always there and always supporting you, always wants the best for you. It's easier for it to be available to you. Have you ever had something where it's like you get this nudge like, oh, I should check to make sure I turned off the stove, or I should, do you ever get a little nudge like that? It's like, oh, okay, well, that's, our little subconscious trying to like alert us. And we're like so busy. And it's like, oh, I'm sure it's right. And then you come back home and it's like, should have listened to that one. Have you ever had that?
Yeah.
Okay. When you
Yeah.
get quiet, you're honoring that. And then when it comes up the next time, because it doesn't necessarily happen when you're quiet, but there might be a time when it comes up and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to pay attention to that.
When I
So it's
think,
letting go of the doing and allowing the being. People aren't taught how to be, they're taught how to do.
well, I think as you're saying that, the thing that comes to mind is I think that people are afraid of that because to just be and do, I guess, to be something so counter to what they have been doing is so contrary to their identity or what they've been told they should be doing in their life that they're afraid of what they're going to see. They're afraid if they're that different from what they've currently, the current paradigm, the current lifestyle, the current existence they've created from that other identity. I think that's ultimately, as you're saying, like that's the vision that I have. Like, oh, wait. And you said like, because the way you brought it up was like, I think you left the stove on. There's a fear, like, wait, something bad's about to happen.
I don't know but on the other hand, it could be something really good. So it's really what I've learned of it for me is, and this was a huge thing, and it's not that it's counterintuitive, it's just that it's not what we think of. We think of, okay, I'm going to go pray for 5 minutes. I'm going to go meditate for 5 minutes. So I'm going to meditate. I'm going to listen to this meditation for 5 minutes. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to have my hands like this and I'm sit like this and I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes. So I am doing meditation for 5 minutes and I get done and I'm like, yes, I meditated for 5 minutes. I can check that off my schedule. I did that. When you are becoming just listening to your inner voice, just listening to yourself, just in the being and the allowing, there's none of that. You just get quiet. And if we call it our kind of the monkey mind, if all these little ideas start coming to you, just say, okay, I hear, yep, I honor that. Let me just put you over here. I'll get back to you. Okay. And then you just go, just get, so you're not trying to achieve anything. When you get done, you don't have to check off a list that says, oh, I did it. There's no intended outcome other than to be able to be more connected so that you're more intentional and that you're thinking when you're going through things, so that if somebody were to come up to you to say, my husband just passed away, instead of just unconsciously automatically say, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, and then you go to the next thing because you've checked off the box that you did the I'm sorry for your loss, you might be inclined to say, how are you feeling? Is there anything I can be doing to help you? I certainly haven't had the experience you have, but I can respect how hard this must be on your heart. Would you like to sit together? Could I bring you anything? So you're more open to engaging in the moment of the experience where it's at.
You just brought it up, obviously, a couple times, and this was something that really resonated from our first conversation around death, or at least the perspectives around death. Man, I can't remember. You had a different way of saying it though. Like, why can't I remember it right now?
Oh, my husband's birthday into heaven.
Yes, that I loved how you said it. But even just your energy and your perspective around all of it is something I really admired. And you know, I think even just like this being present concept and meditation or grounding yourself and finding stillness, I find that for something like that, I feel like both of the relationship we have with death in our current culture, but also the relationship we have with being present and being still,
Mm-hmm.
so misaligned. And I think like I see these two parallels between how you handle those things. And I see there's like it seems obvious that you would handle it both ways, the same, like a similar way, like your intention or the way you arrive at them is, I find it to be very healthy. And I wish that more people would glean some of that like your insight from how do you handle like birthday into heaven. I think
Mm-hmm.
that we see death with such doom and gloom as opposed to like a new evolution or the next evolution in life. I'd love to hear more about that because I think so many people could benefit from that. And I know a lot of what we talked about last time was about how you've been helping a lot of people in kind of those kind of spaces with just some of the your like volunteer work and things of that nature. I think there's so much that could be learned from that. And I think it's like a natural segue from this being present element.
I'll give you my lens and thank you for asking it. It is something. And what I will preface what I'm about to say for everyone is I don't expect anybody to go, today, that's going to be my perspective from now on. Not everybody has the space. They're not in the space in their life where this is where they're at. And when I was very young, it wasn't the space I was at. I didn't see that. Where I've come in my life to recognizing it is that, first of all, we're here for a very short period of time. It could be 100 years, but that's still, it's a very short period of time. We're not intended to be here permanently, or we would be here permanently. So as a natural part of the time we're here, it's what we're doing here and what we're experiencing while we're here, that there are lessons for us to learn in every single experience that help us be our best and then also allow us to be who we're meant to be in the world. My husband was a Mass everyday Catholic while he was still in the womb. 100% Irish, came from an Irish Catholic family. He, beautiful child of God, loved God, didn't see death as the end of life, didn't fear death. He, throughout his life, lived the best life that he could live, loving people and serving people and doing the right thing. I mean, it was easy for him. He didn't have to ask himself, is this ethical or moral or not? He just naturally was that way. And we received his diagnosis of a type of dementia. And we just looked at each other and said, okay, this is another step in our journey of love. And we accepted it exactly what it was. This is the journey that we're on. And we navigated our journey together. And what I recognized as his health, it being practicing massive acceptance and radical presence, allowed me to stay fully present in the moment when there was a beautiful moment we could share. For example, the last few days of his life were in hospice, and throughout our lives, we used to hold hands with our fingers entwined. And for a period of time, he wasn't able to do that. And when we were in hospice, I was able to put my fingers between his, and he squeezed it gently. So I recognized that he had that. And that meant a tremendous amount to me. Whether he had the access to that or not didn't matter, but it was such a beautiful moment that I was, instead of going, okay, he's going to die in the next 48 hours, he was able to still have the capacity to gently squeeze my hand. I was also able to make the wise choices that are, okay, these are the things to do for his health and for the right things for his safety as we're moving forward, understanding that these are choices that mean that his time within this body and where we're at is about to end. And yet what I recognized is that I had many lessons I had learned because he and I were together. So there's so many things. And I said, he planted many seeds of love for me throughout our time together. The family that we have, the friends that we have, where we are, so many things that are beautiful things to celebrate and enjoy about our life together were still going to remain after his physical body was no longer with us in this particular life. And so I said he celebrated his birthday back into heaven. Whenever I think of him with love and joy for him. I have no idea what heaven is. It's not mine to know. If we were meant to know, we would know. However, I choose to feel very happy for this person who lived their whole life in a way that was serving others and being a good person. That, if there's heaven and all that, then he's in the very best. Not in my control. My control is what lessons can I learn from the grief? Because grief is an emotion we're meant to have or we wouldn't have it. I wanted to be fully present to learn the lessons about grief that I was going through. And I didn't want to be stuck in grief because we're meant to thrive in our lives. And so my perspective is based on celebrating all the wonderful things. And there were challenging times in our lives. We had a lot of experiences. And it's not the absence of the journey. I got to tell you, that was not an easy journey. And I overlapped it with my dad. So it's been about 16 and a half years of being a caregiver. It's not roses every day. However, I wouldn't be where I am today if that wasn't meant to be part of my journey. And so I honored this as part of my journey, learned the lessons from it. Now it's part of what I share to support other people. And yet I don't feel sad about Jack being gone. I feel thrilled that I have so many wonderful memories of him that I can look around and see things that remind me of the love we have.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's why I wanted people to hear that, because you've kind of echoed the same conversation we were having last time. And I mean, I'd love to hear some of your lessons of grief. You just brought that up a second ago, but I love this. Like, what I hear is you're choosing to focus on these beautiful memories, like all the positives, as opposed to the lack, and even just seeing like the remnants of and the fingerprints of his life with you in all the people and the things that you created together. To me, it's what I hear is like a detachment from the physical body, but able in doing so, able to accept a connection to a spiritual body, the memories, the physical presence, the lessons, these other little elements of impact that if we're so locked in and it having to be like love, you said the next step in love on our journey. I thought that was a really beautiful and profound statement there. If we're so locked in it having to be this way, the only way to connect to love or to connect to the relationship, it's so limited. But what I hear in your vantage point is an almost like a limitless capacity to connect to that love now
And
because
have access to, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, please, no, step in. Yeah.
Well, and to have access to it. And it's not Pollyanna. It's not that it's all joy and roses. It's the accepting of all of these pieces were meant to be. There were things I didn't have any control over. He didn't have any control over. It is our, when we are being intentional and when we are at choice, when we're being fully present and we observe things that we're going through, what is there here for me to learn? What is there here for me to know to make the wisest choices? I'm not living from fear of loss. I'm not knotted up like, oh my God, I can't imagine what my life's going to be like if he's gone. And oh, I don't want this. And oh, this is a terrible disease. I didn't waste any energy on that. And there were people who would say, oh, your husband has Alzheimer's. Oh, what a dreadful disease. Oh, that's so horrible. Oh, it must be awful for you. That was never part of my lens. It was what it was. That's the diagnosis he has. This is the life we have. What do we do? How do we make the wisest choices? How do we celebrate the tiny moments? How do we make the wisest choices in the others? And there are challenging moments. There were times I cried, of course, because that's part of the emotions. We're meant to have that. There were things that, the last time he and I walked down to the beach and held hands together, I knew it was the last time we were going to do that. And so I call it drip grief. There's the like hit you with a bus grief that happens all, but when you've got a journey like the Alzheimer's or something like that, or a progressive disease, it's drip grief. Every day you've got a little bit there. But if I used that to drip on me and to bring me down all the time, I would not be able to see all the other things that were around that were meant for me to be in my life, to be the best version I am in my life, and also to help him have the best version of his life.
Mm. Yeah, and even like what I hear at that is that accepting like it's not all rainbows and butterflies, as you said. There will be the sad days, the dark days, the painful days. What I think really shines through in your example is that you were able to more connect to more of the joy, where somebody who gets caught up on those other things doesn't even get to experience any of those very precious moments, like you said, with the holding the hands, walk on the beach, very subtle things that could so easily get lost
Mhm.
in the lack or the feeling of loss in all those moments. Like, or like I could gain this one last moment. And I think the real grief is like, ooh, I didn't even appreciate those last final moments. I think so many people get really stricken with that guilt because they didn't appreciate those little things. And I think that goes for like everyday stuff. We truly don't know when our last day will be in this physical body. And I think we talk about all the time, like, kiss your significant other goodbye, say you love it. Like, why are you forgive now? Like, why are you waiting another day? Like, what's the point? Because you never know. Excuse me. And to that effect is because, as you're saying, like you got to continue to connect it to more joy. I think not enough people without accepting, as you're saying, miss out on those extra moments. And who knows how many more of those extra moments of joy and love and just like pure like ecstasy and being in presence with each other. Like we might miss out on those. I think.
But it's a yes and it goes back to, in the moment of an experience, you can't know if it's ultimately good or ultimately bad. When we were going through some horrifically challenging moments, and we have them in all of our lives, there are lessons in them for us. When we're present in them, even when they're really, really challenging, and even if we don't, because we don't have to understand them in the moment, if we accept, okay, this is what's happening, then, for example, have you ever had an experience and you think back to something that happened years ago and you're like, that's the lesson I was meant to have. That we learn things at other times in our lives that we may not know in that moment what to do with it. And yet later on, it comes back either for us or for someone else. That I've had lessons that happened earlier in my life. And so as a coach and a speaker, and I'm communicating and I'm telling people, this happened to me in this time of my life. And it's an example. As a parent, you tell your children, this is what happened. So when we're able to capture what those moments are, we're able to use them in whatever area of our lives it is. Now, mine happens to be that I've created caregiving programs. I created one called the Caregiver's Journey, and it helps people walk through their caregiving journey. If I hadn't been present and been able to capture the moments of it, I wouldn't be able to offer it to other people as a way to help them without it being, oh, this is going to be really something terrible. And when this hits you, you're going to feel awful and it's going to be this and that. It's like, okay, no, when you see your loved one doing this, then you do this and then you prepare for that. So it helps them be able to be more fully present in their moment. So part of seeing that everything in my life is meant for a lesson for me to potentially become a lesson for someone else or for something else in my life, it makes it easier, whether it's a challenging moment or a beautiful moment, to get the most out of it.
I mean, it's beautiful, like the way you approach even challenging moments to think about how is this going to help. It's almost like you're future casting it. How am I gonna pay this forward? Whatever I'm gonna find through this, how am I gonna continue to, you said, like serving a purpose. I think that in and of itself, I think all of us are looking to, I think nobody's ignorant enough to think like there's going to be zero suffering in this lifetime. I think it's the excess suffering that we are trying to avoid ultimately. And I think your approach when seeking some purpose, like how can this be of benefit? How can this serve something higher? Like, oh, well, it's the pain I'm feeling right now. It's to benefit something. It is serving a purpose. I can be present with it. I can learn from it. I can grow through it. It doesn't feel aimless. It doesn't feel like it has no substantive value other than like just being in pain. I think that's such
And
a
you're still going through it, you
you
know.
go through it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, in your a big part of this where this would apply all the time is when you're training other people, you're a reference reservoir for them. They don't have the reference reservoir of having done things. So a lot of the lessons we have become a reference reservoir someone else can borrow when they're trying to move themselves into a place. Or when you're a coach or something else, they're borrowing a reference reservoir, or you're sharing something that can become a reference reservoir to support and to help them. If you're teaching someone how to live a healthy life and have a healthy lifestyle, if you walked in the room and you were unkempt and your physical appearance didn't support what it was you were trying to encourage them to do, to teach them, to help them walk into and get, they're going to be in the messy middle of it. They're doing something that's outside their comfort zone. If you don't create a space for them to be able to be okay with that and to walk through that because they recognize that there is a purpose for it, then you're not going to be able to help them at all. Just like you're not helping yourself.
I like that, and it's kind of like a dual accountability in all of it. Like you're better able to hold others accountable on their journey while holding yourself accountable to what you need to do to be a good shepherd for those that are you're supporting or at least wanting to
Which
support.
is connecting you to your purpose and clarifying your purpose.
Mm.
Because if it wasn't important to you, you wouldn't be doing it.
Take us a little deeper into the work you've been doing with the caregiver stuff. I thought that I like obviously there's some hints as to what drew you down this line, but I remember our last conversation, like there was some organization you got involved with, but like tell me deeper the story, like where
Sure.
you is going, because I left that, I was like, I think this is where you're going with all the stuff, like purpose wise, because it seems so obvious to me when I hear like this passion you speak with around all of this. I think it takes a very special person, a very special soul to help and support those who are going through these very challenging times. So I think there's just share all those things basically.
I have two lenses that are interwoven in the caregiving space. One of the things that I came to the realization of is I wouldn't have been a business professional for 40 years while navigating many roles of family caregiving support where nobody in the company knew about, or I wouldn't have had the opportunities I had at the time. That was the way that it was. I wouldn't have been able to be a voice of the fact that in business today, because the demographic of family caregivers is rarely captured still, there are a number of hidden costs in businesses of the crisis of family caregiving. It impacts teamwork, it impacts stability, it impacts people staying in the organization. There's just a tremendous number of direct and indirect costs. And a precedent has been set with other things like maternity leave and things like that. There has been a precedent set for the components of the solution. And so organizationally, businesses, if they became aware of it, could very easily and very quickly flip the switch, which would help the organization be able to support this incredibly exponentially growing crisis of family caregiving and family caregiving in business. Then on the personal side, and it really is growing. I'm not even going to go into one statistic because there are a lot of statistics and they're all somewhat conservative because a lot of them aren't being captured. But it's a big deal. Well, then the other side of it is I have been brought into a number of different family caregiving journeys themselves. So as the observer of, not in the beginning, I had kind of went back for some of those, but as the observer of what I was going through and what is there here for me to learn and what is there here for me to do, I created a program to help other family caregivers because I wanted to have them learn faster than I did and more easily than I did. So I walked them through the caregiving journey. And the first one is the caregiver's primer, and it's things to do beforehand. And then the next phase is the journey begins with me. And this is a huge part of it that many people don't consider. It's how are we naturally wired to view the world? How do we naturally deal with stress? So when we go on our caregiving journey and we're looking at other people and going, oh my God, this is the way I should do it because this is the way they're doing it. And then you overburden yourself and you feel awful all the time. It's like, no, we don't need all that. How are you naturally wired to be a caregiver? And then going through the lessons of it. And then the grief section, I call the grace of grief. And then I have moving forward. I mean, we're not meant to stay stuck in grief and stuck in our lives. So how do we reawaken and figure out how to go back and live our lives and eliminate what some people call, I'm doing the little air quotes, feeling guilty about finding joy in our lives again. So I help them walk through all that whole thing because I've done it so often. And I feel it's not random. If it wasn't for me meant for me to share, then I wouldn't have had so many experiences to gather all of these lessons to do something with them.
It's interesting, especially when you're talking about like, I don't think enough people zoom out enough to think about the global, we'll call it cost of pain, of, you say call it caregiving, but essentially like what I'm gathering is like taking care of somebody who's sick in your family, the energetic cost, pulling somebody away, like their attention, their productivity at work. When a business, as you say, like a business might not think of it as a business problem. Like that's not my responsibility. Like that's outside of this. But your human resource, like the employee, the people that are part of your culture, the people that you are, for charging with the flag and saying we're going together, and this is our mission, and we're going to do this together. You're saying you're part of our family. Well, they're technically your secondary family. They're your employees' family. Is very much like going to think that there's not going to be a ripple effect of family member gets sick, a kid is injured or whatever. Like to think that that's not going to take mental, emotional real estate away from doing the job is crazy to think. But what I think was powerful, what you're kind of bringing to the table here, correct me if I'm wrong, is how do you help that as well? And it's not only is it like a good human thing to do, it's also probably pretty damn good for business.
It's a good thing for business. That's where my whole message on, I created a program called Leadership Cares, and CARES is an acronym for Caregiving Awareness, Resources, Empowerment, Solutions. It's okay, because it has to start culturally. The CEO has to say, we're going to embrace family caregivers. It's showing them where there are direct and indirect costs throughout their organization that they can very easily, if they open the door and say, we want you to self-identify as a family caregiver, they can identify where these costs are hidden so that they can do it. Absenteeism, presenteeism, performance, time off, increasing healthcare costs, more team morale. If you've got a team member and they have to like not be present on their team, but they're not telling you it's because I'm being a caregiver and the team is depending on them for things, the morale gets down. So there are a lot of things. And then people who are retiring early because they can't navigate both things. And then younger people who aren't earning that much income and they can't afford to bring care into the home. So they're leaving. So they're becoming part of our government systems of financial support. So there are a whole variety of different things. And because we are aging, there's so many more, there are going to be more people over the age of 65 than under in just a few years. Our available pool of caregivers has diminished exponentially as well. So the costs of care and all those things are increasing. So it's raising to the people's awareness that this is a really big deal. Capture, become aware of it, because supporting it is something that's very easy to flip the switch to do.
I think it's really hard for people to see the long term. I mean, let's call it what it is. People are at the end of the day, like business are like, I'm concerned about the bottom line, business, making money. Like, are we making money off of doing this thing?
Sure.
The way I equate it is I've always said it about health. Like I saw it all the time. People would at some point, if they joined, especially the last gym, like within a year, if they just worked out for a year in this space with these, like we espouse these values and lifestyle stuff, blah, 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 inevitably some big breakthrough in their professional life happened where they were financially in a better position than when they started. But it's so hard, I think, for people, especially when they're feeling like in a very dark space where they feel like there's not enough resources, not enough stuff, that like everybody's asking for money, all this stuff. But when you really zoom out and you think about it, it's like, well, if you feel better in your body, you have better attention, you feel more confident in yourself, don't you think? What do you think that will probably do for your financial prospects? You think you're going to show up better for sales meetings? You're going to show up better as a leader, whatever the thing is. Long term, actually, it makes you a lot more money. And the same thing here, investing in the relational well-being and ultimately the physical. I mean, it's to help the physical health or the relational health of a family. Like that's just good long term. I think it's so hard for people to wrap their head around. Like it's going to long term be a massive net positive. Plus, you're going to have like what type of staff member is not going to appreciate like, wow, my team, they had my back
Yeah.
through my company. They had my back through this time in a day and age where like everybody feels like you're just a throwaway. Like you see people jumping all over the place. Like, well, what if that's the company that was committed to you during the dark times when things went
Mhm.
sideways, when everybody else was like, bye, they stood by you. How do we make it? How
Mhm.
do we help you? Like as a
Company loyalty. I mean, you look at company loyalty of people staying, you look at competitive advantage in the marketplace, because caregiving doesn't discriminate. You can be the chairman of the board and be a caregiver. You can be an entry level person and be a caregiver. It could be anybody in the organization. It doesn't care. It doesn't care what your race. It doesn't care, no psychographic, demographic. It doesn't care about any of that stuff. You're a caregiver. And so addressing that, a lot of the support of it doesn't have a financial cost to raise the level of awareness of it. It's just allowing people to be present and say, I am, and this is what's going on in this season of my life, so that people can work around it. It's been proven when you've got someone and they're going to be going on maternity leave. Okay, the team looks around and says, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? Because they're aware of it. And so the morale stays good. They figure out how to do it. They collaborate together. When you have someone and they can't self-identify that they have that, then it pulls down the entire team. So at any rate, there are a lot of things to it. Part of this is what I've recognized as part of the mission in my life, is to help people become aware. Now, if they choose to do or not to do something about it, that's completely in their control. My thing is more advocating for it, is helping people become aware of it, because it's been so much a part of my life so many times. And I've been the business professional through it, and I've been the caregiver through it. So I know what the journey is. I know where the costs are.
yeah, that was a great example about the maternity leave right now. My wife right now, she's everybody at her school, they're all talking about like, hey, how are we going to support you through this? This is the thing. Like, and she feels so much love when it's like a challenging time and she's in a leadership position. Like that's a challenging time. So, like you're saying, that feeling of like, wow, my people have my back. Like that's loyal. Like what? Of course, you're going to want to be more loyal, and people especially often will take less money to feel like they're part of something that's bigger than themselves. It's something like people just give a damn about me as a human being and showing up when you're going through a challenge. Like sometimes it's a positive challenge. Like okay, maternity, that's
Yeah.
exciting. Like a family member dying, like, those things are like, hey, how did you, aside from just, you know, sending flowers is nice, but like, hey, how do we have your back? And I think what I'm hearing, what I think is really important is like, how do you even create a space where somebody feels safe enough to say, hey, I've got this going on? That I think kind of one of maybe the more tragic things maybe I'm picking up on is like a lot of people don't even feel safe enough to be like, yeah, by the way, like a significant other or parent or a kid is like going through it right now with severe like medical condition going on and doesn't know how to just because they don't feel safe enough to just share a very human aspect of them and to think that they can just completely dissociate that. I mean, maybe for a short period of time to do some stuff, but like to permanently dissociate yourself from this very human element of yourself to that you care about someone. I don't know if I'd want somebody like that in my life because that seems a little dark, especially as part of a
Burden.
community.
If you're a caregiver and you can't self-identify at work that you're a caregiver because either you'd be let go or you wouldn't be given promotions or things like that. And I hear story after story of it. This is not a made up thing. At any rate, you've got a lot of stress at home with what you're doing in this season of your life, being a caregiver. And again, you didn't go to school and get a college graduate degree on being a caregiver. So like one day you're not the caregiver, the next day you're the caregivers. All these things are coming to you. And then if you're trying to schedule doctor's appointments or other things like that. So a lot of time demands, a lot of emotional demands, things you didn't go to school for. And there's a lot of strife for caregivers who are like, I really don't like being a caregiver. This is really not my this is like I don't know what I'm doing and I really don't like it. So they got all that going on. Then they come to work. They can't be sharing it. So they got that extra burden and they're working and the energy around that and then they've got team members who aren't pleased with them because they're not able to be working and they're not able to be as fully present. So it impacts the team members as well. So it permeates through in a lot of different ways. And it's not the absence. It's not a problem that you just throw money at. A lot of the thing that would help in organizations is just for people to say, we're not going to add new programs at this time, but we support you and we're good with you being a caregiver. We understand it and we understand, and you can talk about it with your teams and things like that. So they know they're being embraced and they know that they're being supported. Bonus, if they do provide different opportunities or they include that in other opportunities they have. So for example, there's a maternity leave. Well, we could say, well, there's a caregiving leave. So to have some things, and there's some organizations that have it, and yet it's helping their raise the level of awareness for more organizations to be able to have that during, and it's a season. Now I've had a lot of those seasons, but many people don't have that many seasons. But when I go out to speak, Caleb, it's amazing. I'll explain. You gave the perfect explanation. It's somebody who's caring for someone else, and I'll say, how many of you are doing that? And almost everybody raises their hand. Many people in a room, and it's not an age thing.
Wow. That's some important work there. And I think that just like I know a lot of people talk about workplace culture and things like that, but even just the mental health of a caregiver, right? That you're holding space for somebody that you love right then and there, and like somebody's got to be looking out for you too.
Yeah.
And that could be a lonely place. So if you don't feel like you can go anywhere at all, I think just what you're saying is something as simple as, hey, you need a vent for a minute, or just like, you can talk about it here. You can clarify that this is what's going on so people just know. It's like, yeah, my production's not up this month, but like real talk, like this is what's going on at home. Oh, sounds reasonable. It's not that you're not an idiot. You have real life things going on, and that makes sense. And I think that maybe just demystifying and not like push shoving it on the rug is as most things, like you got to kind of let things air out a little bit so that people can go like, okay.
It's a messy middle. There are seasons of our lives where it's a messy middle. It's a messy middle. And people help because we've all had messy middles and we're all going to have messy middles.
Yeah. Hmm. I just love the way you look at things, and I think your work is incredibly important. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm taking a look at the time. We have some fun questions that I like to do. These are my
Oh, good. Okay, let's do
trivia.
it.
We're pivoting from heavy stuff to a little bit lighter stuff now.
Sure.
So, question number one:
Yes.
what sports or creative activities did you do? when you were younger, and how did you play them?
Mm. I was always moving as a child, and I was in gymnastics and ballet, two of the wonderful things I truly enjoyed. I was in track, slowest runner, but I could run for hours. So I was, if there was a sprint, the lights would be off before I got done, but I could run for hours. But loved gymnastics and ballet and that. And then our family got into showing horses. So I showed quarter horses around the world for a number of years. We raised and trained and showed them, and I loved that. When I got out of college and moved to Atlanta, I picked up tennis and enjoyed that quite a bit and just loved playing it. The only one of those that I really did competitively was showing horses, and we did that quite competitively, and I did that quite a bit and loved that. But I also just loved playing with the horses and breathing breath. So I was fine, and I really enjoyed all the different activities of baling hay and mucking stalls. So I kind of got along with all of it.
Mhm. So, why I asked that question? When I was in college, I took a class on, I studied kinesiology, and at my school, there was a lot of PE majors. And one of the classes was on play, and, or at least it was part of the class. Anyway, what was the revelation through this, like, was how important play is, and that play actually shows us a lot about how we show up in life. So especially that example with the showing horses, what I see is like you kind of got in with all the things, like you fell in love even with like the not so shiny parts of all of it,
Oh, I
and
loved it.
everything
Yes.
has a purpose. But like,
Oh,
go figure, you're still kind of, you're doing a lot of things, played a lot of
yeah.
roles, like clearly. But even that specific example of like, how do I care for this animal? So there we go, caregiving. Go figure, that keeps
Go
showing up.
figure. Uh, I'll give you a great example. I'll give you a great example toward your thing. One of the parts of it was something they call cutting. So you have a horse and you have a herd of cattle. And cutting is you take and separate one cow from the herd, and you and the horse keep the cow from getting back in the herd. And I loved it. So at the time, I'm like 16 years old. I got hair down to my waist. The guys would have, and these are like some of these cowboys who were, I'm the only one of the very few women. They had the chew, the round thing where there was bubble gum that was in a chew. So I would put the bubble gum chew in my back pocket, and I would do, well, I would get out there and I would be having so much fun. I'm giggling. So I'm doing cutting, and then the guys are like serious and they're like back and forth. And I'm giggling, and my horse and I are just having a ball. So I would win against these guys who were like the world champion and these big old, like guys. And here I am, like 16 years old with pigtails going, and I'm winning because and I'm laughing. I've got the giggles. So yes, I got great joy out of it.
I love that. And go figure, you see a lot of just your tendencies and how you've approached it. Like, it sounds like you carried on those things, especially into this season of life. So I thought that was really cool. That's why I love
That's a
it.
good question. Yeah.
There's more depths to all these questions. Of course, what I've loved about these, so I'll give you the reason why I started doing some of these trivia questions, whatever you want to call them, quote
Because they're
unquote.
not trivia at all.
They're not. I was looking for like, how do I bring a little more like play to this podcast? Because I was like, like we go down some heavy stuff, but like, how can sometimes we also bring some lightness to this, but also still have the Caleb twist? Because I like to have, my things about it. Like, it has to be, you can't just be like shotgun spray kind of questions. Like that doesn't excite me the same way. I wanted to have some depth, but that's where some of these questions kind of evolved from. So with that, question number two: what if you're stranded on a desert island?
Hmm.
You get to bring one movie and one TV show with you. What are those and why?
Mm. TV show would be I Love Lucy.
Oh,
Uh, the first movie that came to me is Mary Poppins.
really? Well, now I have to know why both of those. Why are those coming with you?
Have you, since that show I Love Lucy came out, ever watched an episode of it?
Not in ages. I think there was like Nick at Night where they would play reruns of the I Love Lucy.
Hysterical. humor that is ageless, humor that can be self-effacing, situations and things, and you're like, so of things where you can just bust out. I love Lucy. We're absolutely hysterical. The personalities of the characters and how they played off of each other. I just loved that. And then what I loved about Mary Poppins was uh, such a beautiful thing with Dick Van Dyke. I mean, the smile that he has and his view of the world and the magic of Julie Andrews in that. And you can take people who were unhappy or people who didn't know how to see joy in their lives and could invite them into I call it inviting people into the consideration of an alternative perspective. And as the movie went on, they were able to bring joy into their lives in ways that fit them, and you felt good.
Love the answer. And you basically took the words out of my mouth as to why I care about this question. But often that enter I didn't appreciate how what entertainment we engage in often tells of us like a lot about how we think about things and what we choose to how what our perspectives are, especially if we're the things we're going to watch for the rest of our life. What are we looking for? For the record, there's it's most people will bring something like they choose something that with a lot of humor in one of them, one of those answers, whether it's a TV show or the movie. I especially like what you just said about the movie with inviting people into an alternative perspective, which clearly you have been doing, which I think is just fantastic. Plus, I think like, especially inviting somebody into alternative perspective, like just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Like, here's an
Lots of
alternative perspective.
lots of metaphors. I will tell you one, since you're talking about movies, I'll invite you into the consideration of an alternative perspective because this is something that I learned. Go back, you can Google this. There is there's the movie The Wizard of Oz, and you can watch it. There is a whole nother storyline underneath The Wizard of Oz that is not what most people would see when they're watching. It's like the esoteric version of The Wizard of Oz. I was absolutely blown away when I did the research, what was behind different characters, what was behind the story, what was behind a lot of it. And it was one of the things that really did help me when I was thinking about people being invited in the consideration of an alternative perspective. It looks one way on the surface, and yet what's underlying it was a different message. So I encourage you, if you get curious, to go look up what was behind the story of The Wizard of Oz.
I really like that. That's cool.
It was pretty cool, I got to say. It is pretty cool. I go back and study it periodically. It's like, whoa.
The only other time had one, I did so my brother-in-law, I was out in California years ago, and they're the only, his only time the first time I ever heard, like, if you watch The Wizard of Oz, and what do you play? Is it a Pink Floyd song?
Mm.
I can't remember. It starts, but like the music goes with the movie, and it's pretty
Ooh.
wild. Yeah. Maybe mildly intoxicated at the time as well. So like that really kind of added an extra element to the whole thing. So when I was in it, I was like, what is going on here? Like there's a story behind this thing right now.
Yeah,
So I like the hidden meetings underneath that. Like,
yeah.
and to what you're saying, the reason why I also like this question, I took a film and lit class in high school.
Oh,
And I was a real jackass when I said this to my teacher at the time. I was like, we were analyzing one thing. For the record, I really struggled with art and like creativity for a long time, like free form creativity. It really just I can't, and it was definitely from like an envy standpoint. Like I knew how to be an athlete or knew to be a good school, like practical stuff, but I didn't know how to connect to this artistic, creative side of myself. Anyway, I kind of poo-pooed the idea because I remember there's this one time it was like the shadow, the blinds over somebody's face. Well, that's representing like this character feels trapped right now or caged in. I was like, they're thinking too much about this. And now I look back and like, that was a lot of work to think about framing this scene and that one shot this way, that time, and like, and then still build the rest of the movie. I'm like, that was a real jerk for like being so like snotty about this thing. Like, like that. There's a lot of I get it. Like now I look back to those types of like I can't unsee it when somebody does that thing. Like, oh, there it is.
yeah. Alfred Hitchcock was the master of that.
It was a Hitchcockian.
framing scenery, and you can go and there are places that he explained or other people had explained what he did in the way he set up the scene so that you had this emotion.
And what you were saying there about whether it was like the story that lies beneath,
Yep.
tapping into that thread, this emotional thread, I think is so powerful. So I think it's really cool. I wish I'd paid more attention to that stuff and cared earlier because I well, think of all the great lessons I missed out on just because of that. Maybe I was downloading it subconsciously. Anyway,
Yeah, you raise it to your level of curiosity. Your life's not over. You can go back and explore it now. You might have a better, since you're open to it now, you might have a more impactful lens to have it be something that could even touch your life today.
yeah. Well, I do try to enjoy movies and shows that way now, and I do find myself having more appreciation for what they're trying to do, which is cool. Especially now that I have to do some of my own content creation. Like, how do I I'm trying to get this feeling across for somebody. How do I
Yeah.
do that? Damn, I really should have paid attention beforehand. Ah. Third
Hmm.
and final question:
Yes.
what is your deathbed meal, and who are you sharing it with, and why?
Hmm. My deathbed meal is a BLT with extra mayonnaise on wheat toast. It's fresh corn on the cob that's been dipped in butter and rolled in salt and pepper. It's homemade rhubarb pie, not strawberry rhubarb, homemade rhubarb pie. And I don't care who I share it with.
Interesting.
I don't care who I share it with. Whoever I'm with is who I'm meant to be with.
That is the first time I have had that response, and I like it. So, of course, naturally, I also have a reason why I have this question. Number one, I believe world peace is going to be accomplished one family dinner at a time. I think we don't do family dinners anymore, but I think that's where it's like our first school. We learn how to have discourse with the people in our life, the people that are surrounding us, and we're learning how to interact with all those energies. And go figure, if we can learn how to make peace there, I think we can learn how to make peace a lot of other places. The secondary piece, and this is why I think what your response is really interesting. I wrote a speech a couple years ago for my I officiated my youngest brother's wedding, and the speech is called "The Window and the Mirror." And I started with,
Ooh,
"Eyes are the windows to the soul, but what if they are something more?" In general premise about this is that they're also a mirror, but you think that it's a window. You think you're looking into somebody else, but it's really showing you something about yourself. And you're talking
yes.
about, you go around your life, who is my mirror? Like, what are they showing me about myself? We were talking about that. And ask about deathbed because so much as we can choose, but I think what yours was very interesting, very open, which definitely lends into like the curiosity and the openness that you approach things with. On our last day, that mirror is showing us the furthest evolution of ourselves, and at least in the search of our purpose in our lifetime. And I think your response to that question very interestingly illuminates, like, I don't know, but we're going to see, and I'm going to keep reaching for it. That was my interpretation of it. I thought that was cool.
Absolutely. Again, it gets to going to unquenchable curiosity that I, some people, I think it was the first time I heard it was from Dr. Wayne Dyer. He said, some people come into our life for a reason, some people come into our life for a season, and some people come into our lives for a lifetime. And I am excited about who is going to continue to come into my life. Now, if I fall down the stairs, you're my deathbed person, so, but I didn't, so, it could be you. I so whoever it is, there's a purpose for that person being there at that point in time. And it'll be, I again, like my husband, I have no fear of death. I don't see it as the end of life. I don't know what's next, and that's okay because I've got enough to be thinking about right now with what I'm doing. So I just celebrate. Okay, well, it's going to be what it's going to be. Now, I am very intentional about a lot of things I'm doing. I'm not just like being la la la, well, just like whatever comes along. But of things I've really gotten very good on, and this is again the massive acceptance and radical presence. There are things I have absolutely no control over. Why should I waste emotion on things I have no control over? Why not focus my time and attention, my talents, my purpose on things I have control over? And the rest of it, if I'm a model to help somebody else do something different, then I can model things, but I can't make anybody do anything else. I can't I can't turn the switch off. If somebody's got something going on, I can't unswitch it for them. So if I'm present in it and I accept it, then okay, it is what it is. What's there here for me to see and to explore and to do and to learn from?
Love that. Here's the little underlying story to those three questions.
I want it.
So when I was younger, my father worked a lot, traveled a lot, but and we didn't say like I love you and that kind of stuff when I was younger. We do now. Excuse me. But I always knew I was loved. And the way I knew this, every, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks, my father would take me out on a boys' night. We'd go to Sports Authority back when it was open. We'd wander around, maybe buy me a sports thing. We'd talk about athletics, talk about whatever. We'd go grab a bite to eat, and we would go see a movie together.
Oh,
And he was like fully present with all this stuff. And I learned over time, like there was a lot more stuff going on in his life that I had no concept of, but he
yes.
was fully there with me. And we talked a lot about being present today. And that was the way I felt connected. And this is my little way of welcoming you into feeling loved and connected and that you're important to me. So,
And isn't that so beautiful? And if you think about it, there are sometimes we have experiences with unintended consequences, and sometimes we have experiences with unintended gifts. It wasn't his purpose for what he did, most like I don't know him, but it probably wasn't his purpose so that it would become something that you then had as a major part of your life. It was so that he had a relationship with you that was authentic to who he was and that you would have your relationship. And yet look at how beautiful the unintended gift of it is that now you're touching that experience of his with many people in the rest of the world. You're the pebble in the pond with this, and he started it.
yeah,
He was the pebble in the pond.
he was the pebble in the pond. I happened to be the ripples or
And
my,
it,
the
yeah, and
amplitude.
it could have been that he didn't have it in his life and he wanted it for your life, or he had it in his life and wanted to make sure you had it. So again, unintended gift or consequence, it could go back to those kinds of things. And yet how beautiful it is. And those are great questions.
I'm glad you enjoyed them. They're fun.
What would
They're
have been
great.
your last meal?
Who?
What was your last meal?
What's my last meal? See, the real hard problem there, like I need a buffet of the world's cuisine, and I'm gonna, stretch my imagination and say I have a bottomless stomach at that point because I
Ah.
love experiencing food, especially being taken on another person's journey. I love it. Like that's like I think culture shows up on the plate. So much is there. I like tasting different types of cuisines and all that stuff. Sometimes my eyes are bigger than my stomach, so I get myself in trouble there. Um, but I love
You
that.
were on the desert island and you could only take one food with you. What would you take?
Oh, good question. Oh, only one food?
Only one food.
Like the health side of me is like
I didn't qualify it at all.
I know
One food, desert island.
my I love ice cream to no end. So if all I could ever have for the rest of my life is ice cream, it's ice
There you
cream.
go.
It is. So that's a good one. I've never had to answer that question there. That's good. And I've spent an ungodly amount of money on ice cream. My favorite ice cream shop is up the road. They know my order. They don't like it's a problem. It's a
Okay, so
problem.
I just have to clarify something for you. When you spend money on something, you don't get a return. When you invest money, you get a return. So you have invested in a lot of ice cream because you've gotten a return that's great joy.
That is a much, I'm going to use that. I am going to remind myself at the next $30 purchase of ice cream when I wander in there. I don't know, by the way, that $30 purchase is just for me, just because I want.
You're investing in the experience, and it's
I
a
am.
beautiful experience. You want to enjoy it, celebrate it. Yeah, have fun. If you're going to do it right.
Years ago, I'll share this with you. I bought Naked Sunday, as in Sunday, ice cream sunday.com. I didn't know that's a term. It's like a UK thing, a naked Sunday. And I was talking with somebody in the UK, and I was like, hold on. We were still on the Zoom, and I'm there, like, and I bought it on the spot. I have plans of making an ice cream brand one day. That's everybody can hear it. Like that's a goal, like a pipe dream of mine is to have the Naked Sunday. I still own the domain name. It's gonna happen at some point.
Like
So
it. I like it.
yeah, party on. I don't know how I'm gonna get that off the ground, but God'll
Well,
provide.
you've let it out to the universe now, so somebody will reach out and they'll help you. And no, no point not getting. So there are people who have ice cream brands. They'd probably love to have you do it.
Here for it. I'm here for it.
There you go.
I am looking at the time, my dear. But before we go,
Yes, sir.
first things first.
Yes, sir.
Somebody's listening. They're like, I want more Sue in my life. What would be the best way for them to connect with you?
My website is sueryan.solutions. My email is sue@sueryan.solutions. And I'm probably not supposed to give out my phone number, so I'll give those two ways as the best way of getting in touch. I'm on LinkedIn. So I think I'm probably Sue Armstrong Ryan or Susan Ryan on LinkedIn. But you can tell I got red hair, so I'm the only Sue or Susan Ryan that's got red curly hair.
Well, I will make sure those are in the show notes. So anybody who didn't write those down or don't feel like writing them down, just go click on the show notes. The little linky poos will be there, and you'll be able to see the bright, beautiful red hair and all the other smiles to go along with it. Final words of wisdom you'd like to leave our audience with today.
Wake up with unquenchable curiosity. Live from your purpose. Continue to explore what that is. And know that you are here for a reason. And that all of the experiences you have in your life that either bring you great joy, great sorrow, or test you are all there to help you be the best version of yourselves. So celebrate them so that you can celebrate your life.
Mic drop. I'm gonna just, mm. Oh, that just felt good. That made tingles in my heart right there. I loved that.
Yay.
Sue, I love you. You're fantastic.
So,
Thank you for wandering into my life. Let's see if I can get the hearts. It's not doing it on my side. Yours got 2 today, and mine got 0. I don't know why mine's not working, but
oh, you got to hold your hands like that, though, Caleb.
it's a heart. See,
You
you
got
got
this.
3rd.
You may not have yours turned
Oh,
on.
I
Oh,
got
you
it
you
done.
got it.
Got it.
Yay.
I got it. There it goes. Anybody who's listening, heart's just fired up on the screen. We accomplished this one.
Double hearts. This is pretty powerful. We had double hearts.
Double hearts. This is a love fest right now. It's just a
Love
love fest.
fest. Come on.
I am deeply grateful you've wandered into my life. I'm
Ditto.
excited for many more conversations and hangouts together. And
Ditto.
thank you for sharing all that. Everybody, go check out the links in the show notes. Go hang out with Sue. You will be happy you did. That's all we got for today. Thank you for sharing your time and your energy with us today. And until next time, I remind you to love everybody.